Welcome to 30 Minutes of Faith. We are pleased today to have Rosario Dowling with us. She's active in our community and doing good works. Thank you for coming. Tell our audience what you're doing in your life these days, will you please?
Sure. Thank you for having me. I'm actually the regional coordinator for Northern California for California Against Slavery. So it's an organization that is currently putting a ballot measure forward in front of the voters for stronger anti-trafficking laws.
Well done. Now, let's back up a little bit. Where were you born and raised?
Well, actually, I'm a naturalized citizen, and so I was born in Mexicali, which is Mexico. And at 7 days old, I was brought into this country specifically because we had two sisters that were illegally adopted from a clinic at the border. And so my parents entered this country to find those sisters. And so I was raised in Riverside County, Southern California, grown, raised on a farm, and been here ever since. I love California.
Nice story, and the sound Mexico sounds lots better than when we just say Mexico.
That's right.
Do you have brothers and sisters?
I do. I have 3 brothers and 6 sisters.
And were the other sisters found?
13 years later. 13 years later, we found them.
And
yes.
they're part of the family?
Well, they're not integrated into the family, but they are raising their own families. They were found healthy, and we were able to reconcile with them, and it all worked out. They've moved on, but they're definitely still in contact with us.
Were you taught to speak Spanish growing up?
We only spoke Spanish in the home
Oh.
up until we entered about 4th, 5th grade. Then it turned into the English-only environment.
I wish I spoke Spanish. In California, that's a good thing
It helps.
to have. It does.
Helps.
Now, did you grow up in a religious home?
I did. I grew up in a very Pentecostal home, and just very strict. A lot of rules, a lot of good, though. A lot of good in it.
God was a part of your life?
Absolutely.
Where'd you graduate from high school?
Bell Gardens, California. Yeah, close to where the famous Carpenters are from. So I like to say that.
And was high school fun and good and all the things that many do?
I was into sports, tennis, fencing, and track and field. Yes.
Running?
No, discus and shot put.
Ah.
I know I don't look like the discus and shot put person, but it's a lot of leg strength.
Track and field was a big deal in my generation, and these days it's more specialized. It's not quite so much. Everybody
Right.
wants to play football or basketball or baseball, it seems like. Are your parents still living?
My mother is. My father passed away in 2008, but I come from hardy stock. I have a grandfather that lived to be 95, and we have another person in our family who's 117.
Wow.
So
Impressive.
hardy stock.
Now, have you been able to go back to Mexico and visit family and all of those other things?
Yes. At a younger age, I was definitely taken back
Oh, good.
and visited. I think my longest period there was about 2 months for the summer months from school, off of school. But otherwise, I haven't been probably in the last 12 years.
When I was in elementary, my 2 oldest brothers took a scout trip and they went to Mexico. And they brought back souvenirs and all those other things. And I was so envious, and I thought, I'll never get to see that country. And then we got to be adults, and Mexico was a fairly easy place to travel and visit to, and lots of sights, and lots of history, and lots of beauty, and lots of everything. So we've traipsed in and out of Mexico a dozen times in our adult life, and I've loved every minute of it. It's a wonderful country.
It definitely was, it seemed as though, anyhow, within the last 20 years, things have definitely changed as far as being able to easily enter or just for tourism's sake. But there's some beautiful, beautiful areas that if you go to, you're just amazed that it's still populated, or that, you know, you can go there and still be a tourist.
We were in somewhere, I've forgotten right now, but we got a chance to go up into the mountains to a village. And the reason we wanted to go there was a church, Catholic church, that had been there since the 1700s or something like that. When we got there, they were remodeling it, and they were trying to save everything that was of value and then fix everything with modern sorts of things. But I talked to quite an elderly woman in her 80s that day, and she'd been going to that church since she was a tiny little girl. It's the only place she'd ever gone. And I could have sat and talked to her 3 days as she unfolded all of the things. And typical little town, little main street, fountains at one end, the cathedral down at the church at the other end, and all the shops in between. Well, what brought you to Sacramento? How did you end up here?
Well, my spouse, obviously, his work brought us here. And so we started to raise our kids here. They went into the school system, and we've been here ever since. So now I want to say about 13 years we've lived here in Sacramento.
And how many children?
2. I have 2 sons.
And are they in good health and happy?
Yes, actually, they're great kids. I can't complain. One graduated ahead of time and is in college, and the other is trying to follow in his brother's footsteps as well. The competitiveness between boys. One does it, the other one wants to do it as well.
Have you liked motherhood?
Absolutely. My goal as a child was to be either a missionary or the best stay-at-home mom that I could be. And I feel that I've fulfilled both so far.
When my mother was elderly and nearing death, I said to her in a conversation, "When you were a little girl, what did you want to be?" And she said, "All I ever wanted to do is grow up and be a mother." Just wanted to be a mom. That's what she wanted to do. Now, you and I had talked earlier about my feelings about the girls, the females, the women taking the brunt of so much ugliness in society. And you talked about having given a presentation here just the other day. Will you talk a little bit more about that so our viewers can hear and understand?
Right. I'm able to do presentations on college campuses. And so I just did one yesterday at a sociology class at Sac State. And basically was talking about the fact that there isn't enough awareness within our community regarding the systemic issue of the depravity that continues to be perpetrated, specifically, as you mentioned, on our females, on our girls. And we've yet to even tap into what is happening with boys in our community as far as sex trafficking. But there's so much that needs to be brought to light. It can't stay in the hidden and the unknown and staying in the ignorant phase of what we're learning in our community. We can't stay ignorant anymore. We need to know, we need to be taught, we need to be basically indoctrinated to how this continues to develop and how it continues to stay in place. It can't be status quo anymore.
And how can we indoctrinate?
We need more people getting involved, volunteering, and really reaching out. Once you know what this problem is, you start actually looking for it and you start seeing it because it's very prevalent in our communities. And all we have to do is be told this is a template. Now with that template, start looking in your community. And then people will start putting 1 and 1 together, 2 and 2 together, and we'll start realizing this is happening in El Dorado Hills. This is happening in Granite Bay. This is happening in Sacramento. And the more we continue to put that out there, the better it is in the long run for the fabric of our society.
Now, most people, when they hear about that it happened 2 houses down or down our street or whatever, are stunned, are they not?
Yes. People are still, like you mentioned, flabbergasted that this is happening here. Most people think, well, I know so-and-so went on a missions trip to India, so-and-so went on a missions trip to Spy Park, POC, and they just immediately, the notion is that it's somewhere else, it's not here. And when it does happen here, they'll say, well, that girl was asking for it. She was looking for trouble.
That's a really bogus approach.
Absolutely, and that's really an ignorant
Well
statement.
said.
It's not something that you're looking at the background, the dysfunction, what has caused that girl to be where she's at, and who is exploiting that vulnerability of the dysfunction in her background. And that's really where we need to start hitting hard, is who are these men and women that are exploiting and feeding that demand.
Now, if we put telephone numbers and website addresses on the screen as part of this, can people call your organization to volunteer?
Yes, yes. And locally here in Sacramento, I have a number for CAST, and of course our website is readily available as well.
Now, why is this happening? I mean, is it happened through the history of time, and just because of media and that we're just hearing about it? You know, why is it happening? Why is this becoming epidemic?
What certain professionals are saying is that it's only becoming an epidemic due to the fact that we have shied away from it for so long. Oh. And so the more we allow or make allowances for, the more prevalent the predators, the perpetrators of this specific issue feel at ease to be in our community, feel at ease to continue to grow their enterprise, feel at ease to be more in your face, because no one is challenging them. And so our laws are weak in California. Our way of thinking in who's who, in what community, you look down on someone for their upbringing, you look down on someone for the dysfunction in their home. And so by not wanting to know too much or go into it, you're allowing that. You're allowing that systemic issue to continue to be a problem.
When I was in junior high school, I would walk to school with a girl who was very pretty, who personable, I liked a lot. But her grandmother was Pakistani, I think it was. And she had darker coloring than the typical Caucasian kids. By the time we were about end of 9th, start of 10th grade, she was already an outcast in that town, just because of how she looked. They eventually moved away, and I ran into her during our senior year and at a big city high school where she was head cheerleader and all those other sorts of things. And I was thrilled to see her again.
Right.
I stewed over that for months and months. How does that happen? I mean, my parents weren't saying to me, stay away from her. In fact, my mother was saying, she's such a darling girl. She's a wonderful girl to have as a friend. But do you have an opinion as to why do we get to that point where we say, you know what, I'm not going there. I don't like the way she looks.
I think there's something to be said where we don't want their particular issue on us. And so if they're already shunned and unliked, you don't want to be a part of that. You don't want to be shunned. You're part of the rest. You look like everyone else. You dress like everyone else. So you don't want that negative attention. And I think specifically why these girls and boys are targeted within that age range, 12, 14, 15, is because we're looking to find our identity at that point. And we're very vulnerable. And so if friends don't stand by us, if we don't have the right positive people in our lives, we can easily be influenced by the negative, easily be pulled into something that is not going to be a good positive step down the road for us.
Would you say that the boys and girls who get trafficked are vulnerable where they are in their lives as far as their family and school and those kinds of things? I mean, they're just looking for someone who might show them some attention?
Yes, absolutely. 89% of these girls that are involved in this specific issue are from foster youth. They're homeless, runaways, and they're looked down upon. And so they already have a stigma to them. They've been displaced from their original family. They're now possibly in a dysfunctional foster family. But just the idea that you're displaced from your own family, that puts you in a feeling of, who am I now? I'm not even with my own family. My own family doesn't want me, or my own family is causing my problems. And so already that child is labeling herself, himself. And so that makes them vulnerable and easily picked upon by the predators.
That would be difficult. You know, I can't go there that your family isn't necessarily wanting to be involved in your life. Is the end result, when the water gets to the end of the row, is it about money?
It is about money for the perpetrators. There are documentaries, there are papers, research papers done on these individuals, and it's about money to them. It's control and money. Control, money, power. I think most men feel their own identity by those three things. Their job description, their wealth, and how others see them. That's their identity for, at least that's what I've seen with men. And so if most of these perpetrators are men, there are women, absolutely. Absolutely, there are women that are trafficking girls and boys. But most men, I would say that that is the real issue, is the control, the money, and their own status.
Hard to, you know, just hard to wrap around all of that. I understand every guy wants a nice car and he wants a nice house and wants to dress well. When we're young, we want the trophy wife. You know, let me find the prettiest girl that's available. But you don't have to get very far into adulthood before you begin to see how phony and, you know, not even much of interest. Let's see, one of the other things I wanted to ask you is I've listened in several different meetings that I've attended where they talk about the intersection between I-5 and I-80 on the West Coast and leading to the Pacific Rim and so on and so forth, makes Sacramento particularly sort of hard hit in these issues. Is that true?
Correct. That is where most of the issue is happening, is specifically due to the fact that we have coming down from Oregon, coming down from Washington. Right now, Oregon is, it's just, there's a heavily infested. Portland has been labeled porn land in a report. And
I have a brother who lives in Portland. I don't think he knows that.
Yes, well, it was a special that was done, and they labeled it Pornland because there are more shops, sex shops, there readily available than in Las Vegas. And we are on the cusp of becoming that regarding sex trafficking of minors if we don't do something soon. And so there's a circuit that is followed from Sacramento, Fresno, whether they're in San Francisco, but going down to Los Angeles, San Diego, and then back up into Las Vegas. And so you have a circuit that is followed. And when you're just looking for this, when you're just, you have, again, with the template, I keep mentioning that, when you have a template of what this looks like and how it happens, you could be anywhere and you'll be seeing, okay, there's something happening here. There's something happening here. And one of our advocates was right across the state capitol, our survivor advocate. And she readily says it. No one stopped to ask me, a 12-year-old girl in high heels, what I was doing out and about at 1 o'clock in the morning. And that's a child.
It is a child.
So, you know, we could readily become just a really grimy place, and we need to really take a stand and do something about it.
I won't forget the grimy place. That's well said. Now, I don't know anything about this, but on television I see that, you know, the girls are being brought in from the Philippines and the Ukraine and a whole variety of places. Are the American girls being shipped somewhere else?
Well, we have 3 of the 14 ports of entry for the United States. Yeah. So we're going to have that issue of foreigners being brought here for specific job placements. And so we have that issue. They're saying possibly up to 17,000 are brought in from other countries. But specifically what's happening here in California, and I would say, I can't say that for every other state, but for California, the domestic minors are used locally. And it just goes to show you the prevalence of the demand here. There's a
that's very surprising.
The demand is definitely here, where you would look at reports, you would look at documentaries that talk about the U.S. citizens that would normally go out overseas to have sex with minors, children. No longer is that as big an issue, because of course we've got FBI and we've got all the great law enforcement agencies that are helping to make sure those passports are looked at, the individuals are already on their radar. But now there are organizations here making readily available children to these Johns, these pedophiles. And so I would say that it's being mostly kept here. There's a great documentary, it's called Playground, and it's specific to California. It gives you the numbers of registered sex offenders. It gives you numbers on the U.S. citizens that would normally go out overseas, but now are fueling their appetite for this issue here. And so we're not seeing the girls or the women being shipped anywhere else. It's here. If it's so readily available here, they don't need to spend the money or risk being caught somewhere else.
We have grandchildren who go to an elementary fairly close to us. And a year or two ago, they were all taught the website you could click on to see where the predators and convicted felons and that lived. And in our general neighborhood of 15 or 20 city blocks, there were 4 or 5. Mm-hmm. And the PTA sort of targeted that and made it all aware. And in one of the conversations I had with the granddaughter, she wanted to know, should she really be worried about this, or is this something where they're just kind of going overboard to make certain we're aware of it? What would you have told her?
I would say this is great information to have. Use it. You don't want to say later on down the road, I didn't know. Someone should have told me. My child is hurt and is a victim because no one told me. It's better to have more information than to not have it at all.
What can the interfaith community do to help get the word out?
Just reach out to either our website, California Against Slavery, or call us here locally. We also have a Fremont office. I would say that if you could network and tell others about what we're doing, we have great resources on our website to organizations that are service providers to minors, service providers to grown women, and also just other organizations that are doing fabulous work. Reach out to us. We've got plenty of information that we'd like to impart and give to you to readily use in your own network of friends or network of contacts. It's so important to spread like fire. We really need to have an urgency to attack this issue before we become something that we don't want to become.
We'll try really hard to do that. And as you know, we've got the statewide interfaith conference coming up in October. One of the sessions of that conference has to do with trafficking, and you will be involved in others. So we'll hope we can do some good things there. Mm-hmm. One of the other questions I wanted to ask was, if you take the 12-year-old girl out on the street at 1 o'clock in high heels, and she eventually finds herself somewhere, how long does she stay in that, and can she ever recover and return to sort of a life of normalcy?
It has to be that we take action immediately. You call law enforcement, you let them know. You yourself could not pick her up. She's being watched. And so it's important to call law enforcement. She will then be placed. She will be arrested, which is wrong, but she will be arrested. And for the meantime, that will be the safe place for her. She will then be mandated to go to a program. She goes into the program possibly for about 8 months. And if she's able to get through the program successfully, they start giving her the skills to be integrated yet again. There's all sorts of great programs A New Day for Children, Missy, and Freedom House. Reach out to them.
We'll get involved with that.
Absolutely.
This is
Thank you.
really good stuff. Now, last question. If you could wave a magic wand in society, humanity here in Sacramento to improve or to make something disappear, what would it be?
It would be, I guess it would have to be that, just the depravity. If we could just get rid of depravity, the evil, that would be my magic wand wish.
Isn't it interesting that good people find that so offensive and less than good people find it attractive?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure why.
I'm not either. It's very, very fascinating. Well, thank you for being here. Very enlightening and informative. We'll continue to work with you, and it's good to have you here.
Thank you.
Okay, take care.
Thank you.
6 years ago, no one predicted the economic storm poised to strike the U.S. and the Central Valley. It's been devastating.
In a new report today, the government says 44 million Americans now live in poverty. 4 million joined the list just last year.
It is the largest number of Americans living in poverty since they began keeping track 50 years ago.
People are worse off than even we may think.
6 years after the bubble burst, home prices have still not hit bottom.
We've had an 8-day losing streak in the Dow that in percentage terms puts it on par, close to that percentage loss those 2 days in 1929.
It was the worst day on Wall Street since the crash of 1987.
A 6-year economic nightmare. But then, there's God. He's been faithful and just through the storm. It's time to celebrate. St. Paul has weathered the storm and is now on the brink of burning its third mortgage, despite the economic climate. We have several celebrations leading up to the big day in June, with several guest speakers,
including the Reverend Maurice A. Bates.
I could not live without God. I can't make it without God. That I'm nothing without Him. I need Him every day just to make it. That's the unthinkable. Will a man rob God? No!
Celebrate what God has provided for us beginning this Sunday. Go to stpaulsac.org for dates and details. St. Paul Missionary Baptist Church has weathered the economic storm.
This is a family celebration. Mom, dad, teens, kids, everybody come on out.